And hello, everybody, and welcome to the Movie Pit Podcast. I am your host, Christian. Thank you very much for joining me today. Last week, of course, there was no podcast. I mentioned on the Facebook page, facebook.com/moviepit. If you want to go give us a like over there. I mentioned that there was no podcast last week because I was at a film festival. I was at the Bruce Campbell Horror Film Festival, to be more exact, and I had a really fun time. It was a really fun weekend. I got to meet a lot of cool people, directors and actors. Well, I didn't get to meet them. I didn't get to meet all of them personally, but I got to see them and hear Q&As and stuff like that. It was really cool, and I got to see Bruce Campbell. So I mean that's a win-win. So I got to see a lot of cool independent horror films. I've been reviewing some of them over at my WordPress account. If you want to go check that out. One of the films we'll be talking about today is actually one I saw, which was Don't Breathe, and I'll give you a little mini review at the end of the podcast when we're talking about Don't Breathe. So, so that was a lot of fun last week, and so there was no podcast last week, so forgive me for that, but I had a good reason. So, if I sound a little odd, it's I have a little bit of a sore throat right now, so bear with me on that. So let's get to the news. I want to talk about a few news items that came out essentially 2 weeks ago now, and then some of the bigger news items that came out last week. Not all of them, because the podcast will be excessively long. So one of them I want to mention. This was one that I was really anxious to talk about. It's kind of been dying down. It really dying down like the weekend right after it came out. But there was a supposed former Warner Brothers employee who wrote an essay, and it brought up some troubles that the studio was having. The essay was mainly targeted at Warner Brothers CEO Kevin Tsujihara, and in the essay there was some talks about the DC cinematic universe. It seemed like the essay was triggered because of Suicide Squad, so a lot of people were just kind of implying that it was just Suicide Squad. But when you read the whole essay, which I will do because it's actually a really good essay, the main essay was really more targeted toward Tsujihara and how he was handling Warner Brothers. But everyone kind of really made a big deal about literally like a paragraph of the whole essay. It's not a big essay either, but it was literally a paragraph of Wonder Woman. So I'm going to read the whole essay because, again, I thought it's actually worth reading. Obviously the merits of it, of who wrote it. I mean, the author is Gracie Law, and everyone kind of assumes that that's a fake name, and it probably is. But here's the essay. I'm just going to read the whole essay because it's not that long. Again, it's not that long, and it's actually worth the read. If you want to read it, I'll link it down below in the description area. So here's the essay. When I left my screening of Suicide Squad last week, I was angry. I was annoyed and let down and frustrated as well, but mostly I was just angry. Look, I'm a big dork, so of course I thought this train wreck of a movie did a major disservice to the characters, concept, cast, and crew. But that wasn't why I was mad. Yes, it is unfathomable to me that Warner Brothers could mess up a movie starring Will Smith, Margot Robbie, and the Joker so completely. But that just had me flummoxed. I was angry because I couldn't stop thinking about you, Kevin Tsujihara. A lot of fans might be angry, and rightfully so, because you keep completely whiffing at properties that we are desperate to love and enjoy, but this is a little more personal for me. See, I am a former Warner Brothers employee. I have so much respect for your studio. I love every square inch of that magical backlot from Stars Hollow to the fitness center I always meant to use. The people I worked with during my time with the company are now close friends. On my last day, I hugged them and told them I loved them. I was there in 2014 when you made the decision to lay off 10% of your workforce. It was a terrible year. Let me catch you up. Every morning I wake up in the pit of my stomach because I assumed that it would be the day I lost my job. Every day I saw someone packing up their desk and carrying a box to their car. I cannot describe to you the relief I felt when my department was told that we were safe, or the guilt I felt afterwards walking through the halls of my office with that relief. But all of that, But out of all of that, the thing that really sticks with me is the memo you sent to all of us. Let me refresh you on my favorite part. I wanted you to hear directly from me about our plans for the studio. In recent days, we have started to hear rumors here at the company too and read misinformation in the press, so I like to set the record straight. I know that the hard work and dedication of every employee around the world is the key to Warner Brothers' success, and I am sorry for the distraction this situation brings to the workplace. At Warner Brothers, we work with the world's most extraordinary storytellers, and our focus has always been to provide the creative environment and financial resources they need to realize their vision. Our commitment to that won't change. In fact, we're investing more than ever in our film and television productions. This is how you open the memo about layoffs. Hey guys, you worked hard for the people telling stories here, and we want to make sure those visions are realized. The ball's on you. That year, we pursued the storytelling visions of Adam Sandler's Blended and Clint Eastwood's Jersey Boys. Failures. We pursued a potentially great summer movie like Edge of Tomorrow and completely botched the release. The same with Man from U.N.C.L.E. We dug in our heels and hoped the Hobbit trilogy would somehow stop being mediocre. We would stop being in the mediocre case of diminishing returns. Talented, loyal people packed their boxes and went home while your storytellers dropped the ball. One could argue that this was not your fault, that you inherited former CEO Barry Mayer's agenda and were merely trying to correct the course of an ocean liner heading for an iceberg. I would not make this argument, and here's why. I wrote this letter last year. I actually started forming it in my head after Man of Steel was a box office failure instead of the modern classic tentpole you were expecting. I kept holding it off on doing anything with it because of one title, Suicide Squad. Zack Snyder's Dawn of Justice was a fiasco, but here comes this plunky, little dark adventure about anti-heroes. I love David Ayer, I love Harley Quinn, I love Will Smith. Put this letter in my drawer. The ship isn't sinking anymore. Everything is fine. There's no way this movie is bad. And here we are. I got back from my screening and dusted this sucker off. You and your executive team and the vision, your extraordinary storytellers, that resulted in the loss of around 1,000 jobs, seem intent on crashing the ship into as much shit as you can find in the ocean by making insane decisions over and over again. Zack Snyder is not delivering. Is he being punished? Assistants who were doing fantastic work certainly were. People in finance and the marketing and in IT. They had no say in a movie called Batman v Superman, only having 8 minutes of Batman fighting Superman in it. It ends because their moms have the same name. Snyder is a producer on every DC film, or every DC movie. He is still directing Justice League. He is being rewarded with more opportunity to get more people laid off. I'm assuming you yourself haven't been financially affected in any real way. You and your studio are the biggest lesson about life one can learn. The top screws up and the bottom suffers. Peter Jackson phones it in, and a marketing supervisor has to figure out a plan B for house payments. Your uneven Hall H presentation at Comic-Con this year was a ridiculous mess that ranged from rushed to boring. When Marvel announced their full slate of films with a fun fan event several years ago, you announced yours on a shareholders conference call. You just don't get it. And it's not just DC movies. It's your whole slate. Jupiter Ascending, Get Hard, Hot Pursuit, Max, Vacation, Pan, Point Break. Fucking Pan, you jerk. People lost their jobs and you decided Pan was a good idea. You think another Jungle Book movie is a good idea. What are you even doing? I wish to God you were forced to live out in the car until you made a #1 movie of the year. Maybe Wonder Woman wouldn't be such a mess. Don't try to hide behind the great trailer. People on site are already confirming it's another mess. It is almost impossible how you keep rewarding the same producers and executives for making the same mistakes over and over. If I worked at a donut stand and I kept fucking up donuts, I'd be fired. Even if I had a tiny decent one every now and then, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna get fired. I love that studio and you're allowing it to sink. It's not about making movies for the fans and not the critics. It's not even about ruining childhoods. It's about protecting livelihoods. It's time to wake up and make fucking donuts, Kevin. So that's the essay. And again, everyone kind of focused on that one little paragraph about Wonder Woman. And after the essay came out, Wonder Woman director Patty Jenkins came out on Twitter defending her film, saying, "Just saw the press about Wonder Woman having problems. Are they serious? This is some made-up BS right here. Produce a source, anyone. You can't because it's entirely fake. Don't believe the hype, people. Someone's trying to spread some serious misinfo. Isn't it until you're immediately involved in things that you realize how totally false these rumors can be. Let me assure you, zero about the movie we are making has been called a mess by anyone in the know. Fact. Real lasso of truth time will reveal the letter to be false soon enough, but lame something so transparent in its agenda gets traction." Now it's true, like I said, a lot of people didn't know who this person is, and I think some people still don't know. And there's a lot of people that came out against this letter saying it was just someone, that was trying to get a lot of traction, someone trying to bury Warner Brothers and Kevin Sujihara and the DC Cinematic Universe. And again, when I read the note, even though the note pretty much was jump-started because of the DC films, she brought up some points with Warner Brothers. Does it sound like it's a bitter employee? Yes, it does. But at the same time, you can't deny the facts of what she was trying to talk about. Pan was a massively disastrous film. Everyone who saw it didn't really like it, and it was a critical bomb at the box office. Man from U.N.C.L.E., which is, to be honest, a pretty decent film, I really enjoyed it. It didn't really get the traction that I think a lot of people did. I know personally some people that saw Man from U.N.C.L.E. when it came out on like DVD and Blu-ray, and when it started coming out on cable, that they saw it and they really enjoyed it. And they said, "Why didn't I watch this in theaters?" And I told them, "I told you should have, because it was really good." So some of the stuff she brings up with Warner Brothers kind of mishandling films is true. But again, a lot of the people, In the Heart of the Sea is another one. She doesn't mention it, but In the Heart of the Sea was also another one that it went from a beginning of the year release to a release, I think it was in November, where everyone kind of assumed, oh, it's coming out in November, maybe it'll get an Oscars push, but no one went to go watch it. And that was also a very critical bomb for the studio. Now, Warner Brothers is one of the oldest studios in Hollywood. It's one of the most famous. But at the same time, every now and then, almost every other year, it seems like, they're releasing these movies that don't get enough traction. And even though they make money, like Batman v Superman, Suicide Squad, and Man of Steel, these movies are making money, but they're not getting the critical love that Warner Brothers thinks they will. So even though everyone's kind of, talking about Wonder, and with Wonder Woman is another story. Wonder Woman has finished filming already, and Patty Jenkins is already in post-production. This movie isn't coming out until next year, in June. So they still have, now, at this point, a little bit less than a year to work on the film. Even if it is a mess, not saying it is, but even if it is a mess, they have a hell of a lot of time to fix it, quote unquote, if it needs to be fixed. We don't know. Was the trailer for Wonder Woman great? Hell yeah, it was. It was one of the best trailers to come out of Comic-Con. But you can't just overtly deny that this letter brings up some good points, like some people are saying. Is it a letter that's just full of lies and whatever? Probably, yes. But at the same time, you can't deny that everything this person says, we're assuming it's a woman, it isn't true. All right. So let's move on from that. Sticking with some comic book news, Natalie Portman is reportedly done with Marvel. In an interview with the Wall Street Journal, the question was asked if she would appear in future Marvel films, and she said, "As far as I know, I'm done. I mean, I don't know if maybe one day they'll ask me for Avengers 7 or whatever, but I have no idea. As far as I know, I am done. It was a great thing to be a part of." Now, Portman won't be in Thor Ragnarok because most of the film takes place not on Earth. Some of the stuff will take place on Earth, but not all of it. And this was confirmed by Kevin Feige. So, I don't know. I mean, it's a bit of a bummer, but at the same time, I don't know. It kind of feels like Natalie Portman doesn't really serve too much of a grander purpose in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I hate to say it because Natalie Portman is a great actress, and it would be a shame, and it is a shame, that we won't, see her in the Marvel Cinematic Universe anytime soon. But in the last two Avengers movies, she's only been brought up in passing, so it kind of felt like that was going to happen. But at the same time, it's like Natalie Portman. I remember there were some stories that maybe Natalie Portman was a little unhappy with her performance, or not her performance, but her involvement in the Marvel films in Thor: The Dark World, which I think is why they gave her a lot more to do in that sequel to kind of make her happy. And then she wanted Patty Jenkins to direct Thor Ragnarok, and then Marvel, I think, had hired her, or they were looking at hiring her, and then something happened, and then she dropped out, and Natalie Portman was upset. I don't know, but something like that happened, and now she's gone, and it is a bit of a bummer, but at the same time, it's like, you know what, it is a bummer, but at the same time, there's a lot of other stuff going on right now that maybe, she would have been lost in the shuffle anyway. So I don't know. Well, I'll leave you guys to decide how you feel about that. John Turturro is filming a Big Lebowski spin-off. That's right, about Jesus. Apparently, he's filming a movie right now called Going Places, which is a remake of a 70s French sex farce film. But according to Birth Movies Death, who did some digging, they found out that the movie is actually a Big Lebowski spin-off that centers on two petty thieves, one of them being Turturro's Jesus and Bobby Cannavale's Petey, to compete to give a woman her first orgasm. So there you go. The movie will also star Audrey Tautou, I think that's how you say her name, and Susan Sarandon. Apparently Turturro is handling some of the script duties at the moment. It doesn't look like the Coen brothers are involved at all. The Coen brothers have kind of mentioned that they don't want to do any sort of spin-offs or sequels to The Big Lebowski, although even Jeff Bridges has come out and said he would like to see a sequel or something similar, something like a proper sequel or some sort of sequel to The Big Lebowski that focuses on the dude's son that he had with Maude, Julianne Moore's character from the first film. So I don't know. That's being filmed. Everyone was kind of surprised at that because it kind of came out of left field. No one knew it was going to happen, and then there you go. So John Turturro is filming a Jesus spin-off movie. A Cops movie is getting made into a film. That's right, Cops. That TV show that's on syndication that you don't know if they're new episodes or not? Cops. It's getting made into a film because screw it at this point. A movie is being based on the long-running TV show Cops. It's getting made into a feature-length film. Can't talk now. The director of the film is Ruben Fleischer. He directed, of course, Zombieland, and he directed Gangster Squad. The idea behind the film is to take the vibe of the show, whatever that means, and turn it into an edgier narrative feature with a buddy comedy bent, or in the vein of Lethal Weapon, which you can arguably say The Nice Guys already did earlier this year with Shane Black. But, no one, unfortunately, saw The Nice Guys. I mean, people saw The Nice Guys, but not as many people saw The Nice Guys. Another movie by Warner Brothers that should have made a lot more money than it really did. But, oh well. But now you got Cops. I don't know if audiences are clamoring for a Cops movie, but we're getting one. Jared Leto has joined the cast of Blade Runner 2. He apparently rounds out the cast and be playing a key role in the film. Denis Villeneuve, who directed Sicario and Prisoners, will be directing the film, with Ridley Scott serving as producer, and the original Blade Runner writer Hampton Fancher coming back to co-write the script. Of course, Harrison Ford will come back to play Richard Deckard, and the rest of the cast includes Ryan Gosling, Robin Wright, Dave Bautista, Ana de Armas, Mackenzie Davis, and Lenny James, and a host of others as well. Blade Runner 2 will go into production, I believe, soon, since it already has a release date of October 6th of next year. Dwayne Johnson mentioned on his Instagram that Jumanji will not be a reboot or a remake, but a continuation of the story that was already told in the original film. Didn't really go too much into detail, but I just wanted to mention that as well. Michael Pena will lead the horror film The Bringing, which is a film inspired by the true story of a woman who was found dead in the water tank on the roof of the Cecil Hotel in Halle. This one is based off the viral video that's been online for a while now. It has no volume in it, and it's basically a woman who is kind of acting odd in an elevator. It's kind of like a footage from the elevator. I think it's just the footage from the elevator. I've seen it, but I don't remember if it was just like the footage from the elevator. I think it's just the footage of the elevator. And she goes in and she starts acting really weird, and she keeps looking out the door and she keeps acting weird, and then she kind of runs out. That's what the footage is. And I don't know if you're familiar with it. I'm sure you can find it online right away. But the movie is inspired by that, and he will be playing a man. Pena will be playing a man who is investigating the woman's death in the hotel. Pena will also be returning for Ant-Man and the Wasp, playing his fan favorite character Louise. So that's pretty fun. That should be interesting. Ben Affleck is eyeing to direct Witness for the Prosecution. He's in talks, to direct and star in the Fox movie that's an adaptation of Agatha Christie's short story, Witness for the Prosecution. The film, and the novel, I assume as well, tells the story of a man arrested for murder of a wealthy older woman who named the man as her sole heir. The man, as it turns out, was already married, which cast a great deal of suspicion on him. And during the trial, his wife agrees to testify for the prosecution, with the eventual plan to eventually secure a not guilty verdict. No word yet on when the film will go into production, but of course Ben Affleck is a very busy man at the moment. He's currently just finished filming Justice League, and he also has his next directorial effort, Live by Night, that will be coming out next year. He's also working on the solo Batman movie, and he has another movie coming out later this year called The Accountant, that comes out, I believe, in October, maybe November. It's one of those 2 months for sure. I forget, but we'll obviously talk about it when it comes out. And this is the big news item that came out last week. This is the final news item that came out last week and 2 weeks ago. Zendaya looks to be playing Mary Jane Watson in Spider-Man Homecoming. And everyone is pissed. The Wrap broke the news that she could potentially be playing Mary Jane Watson, and everyone really got mad. So here's my thing. There was this whole thing about, giving people of color, people of different ethnicities, a chance in Hollywood, and to give them, roles meatier roles than they're getting at the moment. And not everyone, but most people seem to be on board with that idea. And then we get this news comes out, and there was just some nasty things. I actually read some of the tweets that were sent out, and some of the comments that were made, like on the news posts and all that. And there was some nasty stuff said about it. I mean, look, I get it, and I get it. I do. You want, the characters mostly been white in the comics, but you can't be, championing, that's not the right word, I don't know. I think maybe I'm coming down with something. It feels like it. But you can't, go on and say, people of color, people of different ethnicities should be getting, these meatier roles, these meatier, bigger roles, so they can show off that, they can pull it off as well. And then complain online when one of them gets potentially a bigger role. Now, Mary Jane Watson is no pushover. She is one of the biggest female characters in comics, especially in the Spider-Man comics. You think of female characters in Spider-Man, you think of Mary Jane Watson, or you think of Gwen Stacy, maybe even Felicia Hardy. That's it. Aunt May. There. And the Spider, and all the, okay. But Mary Jane Watson is one of the first people that comes to mind. It's a big character. And we've seen Mary Jane Watson on the big screen with Kirsten Dunst. People seem to like her performance as Mary Jane Watson. Some people didn't. Of course, that's the rules that comes with playing a character like that. But at the same time, we don't know. It hasn't been officially confirmed, at least I don't think so, that Zendaya is playing Mary Jane Watson. When she was casted, and since she's been casted, until this news broke out, she was playing a character named Michelle. And I think Michelle, there was a character named Michelle in the comics. I think in the newer comics, I'm not positive. Like she's a roommate or something, or she's a friend in college, something like that. Either way, look, I'm not upset that Zedaya's playing Mary Jane Watson. I'm not, because I'm not that. Because we've mentioned people getting casted in roles that have been played famously by other people. They've been played famously by mostly Ghost in the Shell. That's what I'm trying to say. We've talked a lot about Ghost in the Shell and Ghostbusters even. When there's this gender swap or switch, or even ethnicity swap with Scarlett Johansson in Ghost in the Shell and with the female Ghostbusters. Here it's I guess it's a little bit it's not completely different. It's not out of the realm of possibility, because we've had these type of switches before in comic book films. We've had Hemdale in the Thor movies, and it's always the comic book movies. Have you noticed that? Hemdale in Thor, played by Idris Elba. There was a lot of people saying that why is he being played by a black person? That was actual conversation people were having when Idris Elba was attached to play Hemdale. Another big one, and almost as big as this, Michael B. Jordan playing Johnny Storm in Fantastic Four, and more recently Tilda Swinton playing the Ancient One in Doctor Strange. And I get it, we grow accustomed to seeing particular things with particular roles and particular characters, that when something gets switched around and something changes, we automatically have this knee-jerk reaction where we're like, no, this is wrong. But if it fits the story, if it fits the modern take of what this story is trying to tell, then we should give it a chance. And I know that I think some of the hate is coming from the fact that, not even coming from the fact that, it's coming from comic book purists. And I have a few friends who are very comic book purists. They want the characters to be played by certain people, or they think the characters are being played by someone who isn't right for the role, someone who they think that everyone should look exactly the way they do in the comics. And I made a joke to one of these people saying that if that's the case, then we're actually going to have to clone Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, because no one is that huge in real life other than Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and maybe bodybuilders who have no acting, experience. But I don't know. I mean, I have no problem with Zendaya playing Mary Jane Watson. If she nails it out of the park, if she's a good Mary Jane Watson and does it her own way, more power to her, and I will applaud her for that. I'm not gonna judge someone based on the color of their skin for playing a role that's been mostly white or played by someone else. I mean, I've said it time and time again where we talked about Ghostbusters, where we talked about Ghost in the Shell. If there is a ethnicity swap or change or whatever to a character we mostly know as white, I don't care. As long as the actor does that character justice and plays that character the way that we all know, or a way that makes sense, or that is fantastic. Michael B. Jordan is one of the greatest young actors working in Hollywood today. He is, undoubtedly. And the fact that there was so much hate on him for playing Johnny Storm, no one made any mention of Reggie Carthy playing their father, who was also black. No one made any mention of that. No one even complained about Kate Mara being white. No one cared about that. All they cared about was Michael B. Jordan was playing Johnny Storm, and he was black. That's it. No one could reasonably say that they were angry at Michael B. Jordan playing Johnny Storm because he couldn't act. And we all know that's not the case. Michael B. Jordan is one of the greatest young actors working in Hollywood today. That is without any doubt, in my mind. Maybe some people out there probably don't like Michael B. Jordan, and that's fine. But in my opinion, he's one of the greatest young actors working in Hollywood today. And I think when he signed on to play Johnny Storm, I wasn't opposed to it, because he's a great actor, and he's going to do what he has to do. He's going to rock the character out. It didn't help the fact that he was in a piece of shit movie, but it didn't matter to me because he's a great actor. So I know he's going to go in and he's going to do the best he can with what he can do with Johnny Storm. And we should give Zendaya that chance. Now, Fantastic Four and Spider-Man Homecoming are completely two different movies by two very different studios with two very different teams behind them. Spider-Man Homecoming is already a very highly anticipated movie because it finally brings Spider-Man back to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And Marvel and Sony are not hiring these people just for the sake of it. They're hiring these people because they think they are right for the characters, and they're going to do them justice. So how about we settle down a little bit and wait to see if Zendaya is really playing Mary Jane Watson and how she does before, we're quick to judge. Just saying. All right. I could have been a lot more meaner than that. I was trying to hold back a little bit because of my sore throat, but I think you guys get the gist. All right, let's move on to this week's news items. Rovio is planning an Angry Birds 2 movie because, money. I didn't hate the Angry Birds movie, but it left a lot to be desired. Let's put it that way. Neil Burger is going to direct the remake of The Untouchables. Neil Burger, of course, the director of The Illusionist, The First Virgin movie, and Limitless, has been hired by the Weinstein Company to direct the remake of the French film The Untouchables, the film that already has Bryan Cranston and Kevin Hart set to star. The film follows a wealthy aristocrat who hires a young black man from the projects to be his caretaker after he's paralyzed in an accident. They eventually develop an unlikely friendship and learn valuable life lessons along the way. The film did very well in France and even got a very limited release here in America, and earned Omar Sky, who American audiences will know as Bishop from X-Men Days of Future Past. He was also in Jurassic World. He plays Chris Pratt's friend in the film. Won him a Best Actor award at the César Awards, which is an awards over there in, I believe, in France. No word yet on when the film will go into production, but the film now has a director, so we'll probably be hearing a lot more from the film pretty soon. Helen Mirren is in talks to join the Nutcracker and the Four Realms. We've talked a little bit about Disney's iteration of the Nutcracker here on the podcast. The new film is called Nutcracker and the Four Realms. It will be directed by Lasse Hallström. And already has a cast of Mackenzie Foy, Morgan Freeman, prima ballerina Misty Copeland, and Keira Knightley. The film will follow Clara, played by Foy, a little girl who is gifted a nutcracker by her godfather, Drosselmeyer, played by Morgan Freeman, which comes to life and takes her to a journey to the magical land filled with different characters like the Sugar Plum Fairy, played by Keira Knightley, and others, where they must defeat the evil Mouse King. Mirren is in talks to, if she takes the role, because she's only in talks for the movie, will end up playing Mother Ginger. She, if you remember in the play, or the ballet, she's the woman with the giant dress, where the little kids kind of just pop out under the dress and they start dancing when Clara first arrives in the land. So that's who she will eventually be playing. There's no word yet on whether it will just be a cameo or maybe they'll extend her role. It looks like the movie is taking combinations of the original story and the ballet and kind of, interweaving both of them together. No word yet on a release date, but it looks like they're going to start production sometime next year. Sarah Paulson is in talks to join Ocean's 8. Sarah Paulson has quite a year this year, don't you think, with playing Marisha Clark in The People vs. O.J. Simpson, which made her arguably, again, a household name. So why not add her to the A-list cast that's already growing for the Ocean's 11 spin-off film Ocean's 8? Variety reports that Paulson is in early talks to join the film, presumably to round out the 8 in Ocean's 8. She will, again, presumably, if she takes the role, take the role that was originally written or going to be played by Elizabeth Banks. She was rumored to be attached to the project very early on, but since then her name has kind of just been missing, so it looks like maybe she'll be rounding out that. If she joins, she'll join the cast of Sandra Bullock, who will be playing the lead, also Danny Ocean's sister, aka George Clooney's character from the original trilogy, Kate Blanchett, Anne Hathaway, Helena Bonham Carter, Mindy Kaling, Rihanna, and rapper Aquafina. The film will be directed by Gary Ross, who directed the first Hunger Games films and most recently directed Free State of Jones and will be produced by Steven Soderbergh, who again directed the first 3 Ocean's 11 movies. The film is set to start production in October over in New York, and early reports suggest that the film will center on the group as they attempt a heist in the New York Met Gala. No word yet on a release date, but if they're going to start filming this year, we possibly could be looking maybe at a late release date next year, maybe sometime in 2018, for sure. Christoph Waltz is in talks to join Robert Rodriguez in Attila Battle Angel. The Robert Rodriguez directed and James Cameron produced adaptation of the popular manga Attila Battle Angel is getting its supporting cast together, and the first one is Christoph Waltz. The film follows the title character Attila, who will be played by Rosa Salazar. She was just in Maze Runner: The Scorched Trials, who is an asthmatic female cyborg who becomes a bounty hunter. If Waltz joins the film, he will be playing a character named Dr. Dyson Ido, the cyber surgeon who finds the cyborg and becomes her mentor. It's a nice change of pace for Waltz. He's been playing mostly villain or villain-like characters in the last few films he's done. Either way, I'm sure people are already opposed to the casting of all this, especially, again, even though there's great names attached to, these characters, people are still going to be mad because they're not Asian. Which, again, I know it is something that people should be upset about. At the same time, it's been happening so much. It happens all the time in Hollywood now. You can get mad, but it's not going to change anything. It doesn't look like it's going to be changing anything, at least anytime soon. It is a shame, but it's just the way the world works now in Hollywood, I guess. But Attila Battle Angel opens on July 20th, 2018. Here's an interesting one. Sam Mendes is in talks to direct a live-action adaptation of James and the Giant Peach. Disney has added another live-action adaptation to their already massive lineup, but this one already has a big name attached, or at least a big name to be attached. Deadline is reporting that director Sam Mendes, aka the man who directed Skyfall and Spectre, is in very early talks to develop and direct the live-action adaptation of James and the Giant Peach by the script written by Nick Hornby, who wrote the script for Brooklyn. For those not familiar with the book, first of all, how dare you? That is an awesome book. You should read it. Doesn't matter if it's a kid's book, you should read it anyway. The novel was written by, of course, famous author Roald Dahl, and followed the story of an orphan who lives with his cruel, abusive aunts until a magical gift transforms an ordinary peach into a giant vessel for extraordinary adventures. The novel was already adapted before in 1996. That was done in a stop motion film. When it comes to Mendes, he is already familiar with some of Dahl's work. He actually did a stage musical production of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory back in 2013. So he already has some familiarity with that. But the combination of Disney and Mendes working together especially for a James and Giant Peach movie, that's pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie, that's pretty awesome. No word yet on when the film will go into production, but considering how many Disney live-action adaptations are already in the works, it might be a while, hopefully not too down the line, because this sounds like a really, really cool idea. In one of the biggest what-if scenarios of the week, Vin Diesel dropped a pretty big bombshell via a Facebook video, saying that Dwayne Johnson's Agent Hobbs character that was introduced in Fast 5 was originally written for another actor, and one you probably didn't think about. Tommy Lee Jones. That's right, Tommy Lee Jones. The idea of hiring Johnson was apparently through a conversation that Diesel and a woman named Jen Kelly had. Diesel recalls Kelly telling him, "I would love to see you guys work together on screen," being Dwayne Johnson and Vin Diesel. So, and then, they bought in they bought in Johnson, and the rest is history, as we've seen. So let's start with the obvious. The character of Agent Hobbs would have been very, 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 very different if it was played by Tommy Lee Jones. And I have nothing against Tommy Lee Jones. They're two very different actors, but I think having Johnson play Agent Hobbs was probably the best choice they could have done. Obviously, if Tommy Lee Jones was playing Hobbs, it would have been very different. The fight scene probably wouldn't have happened. The Hobbs character wouldn't have been as involved in the action as he's been in so far. I think Tommy Lee Jones essentially would have been the Kurt Russell character, essentially, just earlier in. Probably not as fun, maybe. Who knows? We don't know. But yeah, I don't know. I think it would have been very interesting. It's very interesting to even imagine Tommy Lee Jones playing Hobbs. But at the same time, Johnson has this different. Johnson obviously has very different charisma and style to what he brings to a character. So it's kind of hard to imagine Tommy Lee Jones playing Hobbs, especially at this point, since there's been so many films now with him. Fast 5, 6, 7. Now we have Fast and the Furious 8 coming out. I don't know. It's really hard to imagine that, but it's one of the biggest what ifs possible. Speaking about another what if, there was a little rumor that's been coming out that Fox, Disney, and Marvel were working on a deal to have the X-Men appear in the Avengers films. Now, of course, some fans thought the talks were real because, Marvel and Sony worked out having Spider-Man come in to Captain America Civil War. But of course, the X-Men are very different because it's not just one character, it's a lot of characters. And it's Fox. And now one of the directors of Avengers Infinity War, because that's when supposedly the X-Men were going to pop in, has come out and said that will not be the case. Joe Russo spoke to comicbookmovie.com and said this about the rumor. Said, as far as we know, right now there isn't any talks regarding the X-Men. I don't know if behind the scenes there were conversations or if there are conversations happening, but we certainly haven't heard of any. It requires a lot of alchemy and very special situation for studios to share properties. And it's true. Sony was just coming off pretty much I don't want to say massive failure, but it was a failure in terms of, I think, how they thought the Amazing Spider-Mans were going to do. So they were just coming off that, and I think they needed a boost. So why not, have a new Spider-Man being reintroduced into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is where he should have belonged from the very beginning, and have him be a part of that world, and then come back and release their own Spider-Man movie with their, with the Sony brand, but now with Marvel's help and the Marvel Studio brand, attached to it. And I'm even though Marvel is this very secretive company that likes to keep things very close to the vest, the Russo brothers have been pretty, they're pretty straight shooters. They kind of, say what the real situation is and what the talks really were about. So when they say, yeah, the X-Men aren't going to be a part of this, I kind of believe it. There hasn't been any groundwork laid out for the X-Men. And, Marvel Comics has already, said that they're not going to do any more X-Men stories or introduce any more X-Men characters because, they don't want to, help Fox out or something. It's a very complicated relationship that, and Fox is known for being a little, stingy with their properties, and the X-Men franchise is doing fairly well for themselves over at Fox, so I don't see Fox really being like, yeah, well, we'll work on something. I don't really see it happening, but I mean, we don't know. Crazier things have happened, so we'll see what happens. Denzel Washington eyes Dan Gilroy's Inner City. Dan Gilroy made a splash with his directorial debut in Nightcrawler back in 2014 and gave us a great performance by Jake Gyllenhaal. Many were waiting to see what he'd do next, and now we know. Not only that, Gilroy is eyeing a big star to help him out in Denzel Washington. The film is a legal drama called Inner City, and Variety reports the film is envisioned to be a character study like Sidney Lumet's 1982 film The Verdict with Paul Newman. In that film, it followed a lawyer who takes a medical malpractice case solely to improve his own standing. Inner City would follow a lawyer who is dealing with a major change at his company, and if Washington signs on to the movie, he will be playing the lawyer. Now, it's on a little interesting side note. Denzel Washington hasn't been in a courtroom drama since the Pelican Brief back in 1993. And that movie was praised by many as well. Now, the film doesn't have a studio attached yet, but it sounds like it will soon, especially if Washington signs on. Now, Washington was Gilroy's top choice at the very beginning, but Washington didn't sign on right away because he's focusing on his next directorial effort in the movie Fences, based on the play by August Wilson. That's right. If you didn't know this, Denzel Washington has also directed films. Although he hasn't directed a film since 2007, which is The Great Debaters, and before that he directed the 2002 film Antoine Fisher. He also directed a TV episode of Grey's Anatomy. That kind of threw me off when I read it. I don't know if that was right or not, but it kind of threw me off. Either way, that was a little weird. But yeah, Washington is a director, for those of you who know. I actually forgot he directed Antoine Fisher, and I didn't even realize that he directed The Great Debaters. That totally took me by surprise. I think part of me wanted to believe that he was a director, and then part of me was like, that can't be true. Otherwise, I would have known that. Didn't know. Learn something new every day, guys. There you go. So besides Inner City, he's also apparently eyeing up another film called Triple Frontier with director J.C. Condor. He's directed films like All Is Lost, the Robert Redford movie, where he's out at sea, and A Most Violent Year, which came out last year. Either way, I think this is pretty cool. I think either way, the potential team up of Dan Gilroy and Denzel Washington, especially seeing Nightcrawler and what he was able to do with that, I think it'd be really, really cool to see that. So here's hoping it happens. The Captain Marvel director shortlist is apparently out. Marvel is looking to gear up their Captain Marvel film as the hunt for a director looks to have been narrowing down. The film already has co-writers in Nicole Perlman, who wrote Guardians of the Galaxy, and Meg LaFurrow, who wrote one of the co-writers anyway of Inside Out, and of course has Brie Larson set to play the lead character of Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel. So the next step would be finding a director. Now, according to the Hollywood Reporter, they have a short list of female directors that Marvel is looking up. The short list includes Nikki Caro, who directed the movie called Whale Rider, Lorene Scarfera, who directed Seeking a Friend at the End of the World, and Leslie Linka Gator, who has directed a lot of TV stuff. She's directed episodes of The West Wing and Mad Men, and she's one of the main directors on Homeland. So that's the short list. And this kind of fits the short list that came out, I believe it was earlier this year, that also had directors like Jennifer Yule, who directed the Kung Fu Panda movies, and Jennifer Kent, who directed The Babadook last year. I'm not necessarily familiar with Nikki Caro's work. I haven't seen Whale Rider, and Scarfara, the only thing I really kind of know from her is that she wrote Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist. So that's kind of really all I know. I don't know if it's Caro. She's working on a film with Jessica Chastain called The Zookeeper's Wife that I believe comes out sometime next year. Maybe, I'm not positive about that. But that's all I know. So that's really all I know. The only person I really know any work of is Gladder. I've seen the episodes she's directed on Homeland, and they're fantastic. They're great. She's directed episodes of Ray Donovan. She directed an episode of The Walking Dead, of Justified, which all shows that I've watched, and she's one of those great directors. And Homeland is a very complex show, and it feels like you're always, when you're directing stuff, especially like on Showtime or HBO, you're essentially kind of directing a movie, a little mini movie, 10 little mini movies, essentially, because, the episode, or 12, depending on what the season count is. That's how many episodes you're directing essentially one long-ass film. And I think Gladder, just by default, because she's the only one I really know any work, because I've seen work of, would be great to see. Marvel, has hired directors before. They hired one of the directors of Game of Thrones. I can't think of his name at the moment, but he directed Thor: The Dark World. Alan something. I literally cannot think of his name. And he's directed some great episodes of Game of Thrones too. Yeah, I mean, the fact that they're hiring a female director, I know was something that Marvel was really keen about. They were right from the beginning. They were like, we're gonna get a female director to direct our first female, solo female superhero film. Which of course DC has done with Wonder Woman. They hired Patty Jenkins. But again, this is Marvel. They've been doing it a lot longer. And Wonder Woman looks great. I'm not saying that Marvel is better. I'm not taking a stance. I think we win on both occasions. DC has been a bit of a letdown, but they're just starting, so we'll forgive them on that front. But yeah, it's a great list. I think any one of them would be great. And if Marvel's considering them, then we should think that maybe they have a chance. So for those unfamiliar with Captain Marvel, is a character named Carol Danvers. She was an Air Force pilot who gains powers when exposed to alien DNA. Perlman, we mentioned this on the podcast, I believe 2 weeks ago, because there was no podcast last week, that the origin will go through some changes, which, again, is fine, because it tends to happen. So we'll see what happens. Now, Larson is rumored to be appearing in the next Avengers film, but it's not confirmed yet. We'll have to wait and see. But Captain Marvel, her film, will be coming out in 2019 on March 8th. All right, so let's get to the last news item for the podcast, at least at the time of this recording. Justice League Dark is moving forward with a new name and a director in tow. So rejoice, comic book fans. Justice League Dark is back on. The Hollywood Reporter reports that Justice League Dark won't just get an animated film, because there's an animated film being in the works right now, but also a live-action film that will be directed by Edge of Tomorrow director Doug Liman. Now, for those unfamiliar with Justice League Dark, it focuses on the more supernatural members of the DC universe, like John Constantine, Swamp Thing, and Satana, just to name a few. However, when the film comes out, it won't be called Justice League Dark. Instead, it will be called Dark Universe. Now, the title change, according to the Hollywood Reporter, is to avoid confusion with Justice League, which makes no sense, but whatever. It's still getting made. I don't care. The project has been in the works for a long time now. It was originally developed by Guillermo del Toro to direct. He wrote the film, but he was also going to direct the film. However, Variety reports that a new writer has been brought in by the name of Michael Gillo, who will work on the script. They don't know how much of del Toro's original script will remain, but del Toro will be a producer on the film, so at least his vision will probably still be a little bit intact. And del Toro back then did mention that the universe will be connected to the DC Extended Universe, which is what they're calling the films. So it should be pretty fun. And they've kind of already introduced magic, really, in Suicide Squad, so that should be pretty cool. So when it comes to Doug Liman, though, great choice. Awesome choice. I love Doug Liman and everything he's done. But this means, and this was kind of buried a little bit in this post, Doug Liman, now that he's directing this Dark Universe, or Justice League Dark, as a lot of people will probably still be calling it, he won't direct Gambit. Doug Liman has dropped out of Gambit, which means that Gambit has taken another hit, because they were supposed to start shooting later this year. I think they're supposed to start shooting in October, before it was removed from the schedule so the studio can work on the script. And Liman was like, okay, well, I'll go direct my smaller movie, because he's going to go and direct a smaller movie called, I believe it's called The Wall, or something like that. But they're like, okay, well, we'll work on the script to make it the best movie we can. And Lyman's alright. But now that Lyman's gone, Gambit is essentially back to square one, because now they're got to work on a script. Now they have to find another director, and there's still really no cast besides Channing Tatum as Gambit. So that's Gambit's taking it pretty hard. I don't know. Either way, doesn't matter. I'm happy to see this is back in the works. Of course, the question is now when we will see it, and it still is. It's been the question for a while. When will we see this on the big screen? Now, the animated film is in the works right now, and it will go straight to DVD. But Dark Universe is something that I'm sure fans have been really eager to see, come back on the big screen, or to not come back, to be on the big screen. But now that it's back in the works, I think a lot of fans have already lost their minds. But I think once it starts getting out more and more, I think a lot of fans are gonna lose their minds all over again. I can't wait for this. I really can't. I've been waiting for this for a while. I'm a little bummed out that del Toro will not be directing, but he can't direct everything he wants to do. He's still a producer, so I hope that his vision is still there. We'll see what happens. Alright, so let's get to this week's releases. This week we have some limited releases for you guys. The first one is The Sea of Trees, which is directed by Gus Van Sant. It follows a suicidal American played by Matthew McConaughey who befriends a Japanese man played by Ken Watanabe in the lost forest near Mount Fuji, and the two search for a way out. Now, the forest in question is the Suicide Forest, the famed Suicide Forest anyway. The film also stars Naomi Watts. The film premiered, I forgot where it premiered. I don't know if it was at Cannes or, I know it wasn't Sundance. But the movie was not very received well. It supposedly was one of the very few movies they got booed. So I don't think it was Cannes, because I think Cannes, they love booing the shit out of movies all the time. But yeah, it wasn't Cannes. But it wasn't not well received at all. Sea of Trees, I think, is only coming out like in a very, very few theaters. So I think it's only coming out in New York and LA, and I believe VOD. I'm not positive about that, but it's coming out this week. The next film is The Haulers, which is directed by John Krasinski. He also stars in the film. The film is about a man who returns to a small town after learning that his mother has fallen ill and is about to undergo surgery. The film again stars John Krasinski from The Office, Margot Martindale, Charlotte Copley, Richard Jenkins, Anna Kendrick, Randall Park, Josh Groban, Charlie Day, and Mary Elizabeth Winston. The film's getting some pretty decent reviews and also looks really funny. So hopefully I really want to go watch this. So hopefully it comes out somewhere near me. The next limited release is Southside with You. It is the predominantly known as the Barack Obama and Michelle Obama date movie. Chronicles the summer of 1989 afternoon where the future president of the United States of America, Barack Obama, played by Parker Sawyers in the film, wooed the future First Lady, played by Tinka Sumter, on an epic first date across Chicago's South Side. So there's that. The wide releases this week, the first one we have Hands of Stone, the legendary Robert Duran, played by Edgar Ramirez, and his equally legendary trainer, Ray Arcel, played by Robert De Niro. Sorry, I don't know why I paused there. Change each other's lives. The film also stars Anna Damaris, Alan Barkin, John Turturro, Usher Raymond, Reggie Carthy, and Ruben Blades. I've been kind of looking forward to this one. I remember watching the first teaser and just seeing the cast come together. And of course, people are going to go watch it because people love Robert De Niro, and anytime he's in a boxing movie, people show up. It is one of the, I don't want to say lesser, that's not the right word. It's one of the wide releases that's not getting that big of a push of being release date, but it's getting a wide release, but not a real big wide release, put it that way. So it's not playing in a lot of theaters. The next wide release is Mechanic Resurrection. Of course, Arthur Bishop, played by Jason Statham, thought he had put his murderous past behind him when his most formidable foe kidnaps the love of his life. Now he is forced to travel the globe to complete 3 impossible assassinations and do what he does best, make them look like accidents. The film also stars Jessica Alba, Tommy Lee Jones, and Michelle Yeoh. I don't know if maybe The Mechanic was like one of those movies where like, yeah, we want a sequel to that. The Mechanic was decent. It wasn't great. It was one of the better Jason Statham movies, the string of Jason Statham movies that came out for a while. But the sequel, it kind of looks like it has nothing to do with the original film. And I don't think it matters. I think we just want to see Jason Statham, beat the crap out of people. So, why the hell not? So that comes out. The last film, of course, is Don't Breathe, directed by Fede Alvarez, who directed the Evil Dead remake. A group of friends break into a house of a wealthy blind man, thinking they've get away with the perfect heist. They were wrong. The film stars Jane Levi, Dylan Merriman, David Savato, and Stephen Lang. I mentioned that last week I didn't do a podcast because I was at a horror film festival, the Bruce Campbell Horror Film Festival, and the opening film for the film festival was Don't Breathe, and I got to watch Don't Breathe really early. Fede Alvarez and Stephen Lang were there, did a really cool Q&A afterwards. So I watched Don't Breathe, and I really liked it. The trailers absolutely give nothing away. Believe me, there is I guess you would say twist at near the third act of the film. it gives nothing away. The trailers have given nothing away. They haven't given away all the best scenes in the movie. Believe me, they haven't. And it's a good film. Jane Levi. You can see from the trailers, Jane Levi, Dylan Merriman, and Daniel Salvato, they play these group of thieves. They want to essentially get out of... The film is based in Detroit, although they didn't film in Detroit. They filmed it like in Eastern Europe. So they want to get out of Detroit, and they find out that Stephen Lang's character, only known as the Blind Man, pretty much, he's credited as the Blind Man anyway. They find out that he has like a lot of money in the house, and they go in and they want to steal him. Of course, it's not a spoiler because they give it away in all the trailers and TV promotions. Daniel Salvato dies first and leaves Jane Levi and Dylan Merriman to stay in the house and kind of figure out a way out. The film is really good. Stephen Lang is fantastic in this. He is literally one of the scariest things in this movie. The production design, the sound design in this movie are fantastic. It really looks like they shot it in the house. They didn't actually shoot it in the house. They shot some of it in a soundstage. But it looks great. It looked great, and it was great. The blackout scene, pretty much, where he turns off the lights in the house. That scene was done for real. They did it as much as they could in pure darkness, and it's a lot longer in the movie than it is in the trailers. That the trailers will let you believe anyway. It's not as long, but it is a little longer than I thought it would be. And it's a great scene. There's a lot of great scares in this film. There's a lot of. It's not necessarily really so much a horror movie, more than it is kind of a suspense thriller. I think that would probably be a more appropriate kind of label. I mean, there's horror elements in the film, don't get me wrong, but it really was kind of more of a suspense thriller than it is more of a horror movie. But it's still, it was still good, and I think Fede Alvarez is one of these directors that I think is going to get a lot of more work very, very soon. I thought his Evil Dead movie was I thought it was great. I thought it was fantastic. It wasn't, he wasn't rehashing a lot of the stuff from the original film. He made it his own film, and that was great. And here in Don't Breathe, it does it again. He does what he does with his cinematographer in this movie is fantastic because the shots are set up so well. The sound design, I cannot get over the sound design. There are a lot of times where it sounds cliche, but there are times where you don't want to breathe because the way they kind of immerse you in the house and the way they immerse you in just with the characters in the setting, it makes you feel like you don't want to breathe because you don't want to give away your location. The sound design in this is great. It's one of the best sound designs I've seen in a horror film in a while. So I really like Don't Breathe. I really did. I gave it a 4 out of 5. There were some parts of the movie where they were kind of introducing the characters and kind of showing their motivations that I think could have been developed a lot more, especially with Jane Levi's character and Dylan Merriman's character as well. Their characters could have been more developed. I mean, Daniel Salvato's character is kind of like, he's the cannon fodder. We see his death in the trailer, so we know that was going to happen. But Stephen Lang's character is, again, he's most of his, character is body language. He doesn't have a lot of lines in the movie until the very end. So a lot of it is body language and just the way he moves. It's fantastic. It really is. I highly recommend Don't Breathe. It won't be for everyone. I know that right off the bat. It's a lot more than a home invasion movie than the trailers make it be. It's really great. Go watch it. Alright, so let's get to this week's box office predictions. Last week's box office was Suicide Squad hanging out there at the number 1 position for the 3rd week in a row. Sausage Party was number 2. War Dogs was number 3. Kubo and the Two Strings was number 4. And Ben-Hur was number 5. This week, I am predicting that Don't Breathe will take the number 1 spot, closing out the summer movie season with that. At number 2, Suicide Squad will finally be dethroned. That will jump down to the number 2 spot. Sausage Party will probably stay at number 3. War Dogs will probably stay at number 4, and I think Kubo and the Two Strings maybe hanging in there at the top 5. Maybe Mechanic Resurrection has enough strength to put it out there. Again, I think Hands of Stone and Southside with You, even though they're kind of more of they're the limited releases, but they're getting a lot. They're getting a lot more theater counts than normal limited releases. They're not playing in as many theaters as the Mechanic and Don't Breathe, or Mechanic Resurrection and Don't Breathe. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Hands of Stone or Southside with You gets into the top 5, but again, they're not playing in as many theaters as Don't Breathe or Mechanic Resurrection. But I still think that Don't Breathe will be the number 1 movie this weekend. I think Suicide Squad, it's been hanging in there, so I think Suicide Squad's going to hang in at number 2 this week. I think Sausage Party will be number 3, unless the parents kind of drive out their kids to go see Kubo and the Two Strings before they go back to school. Then maybe Kubo and the Two Strings will jump up, but I think for the most part, it's going to be a kind of a repeat of last week, just with Don't Breathe in the top position. Maybe Mechanic Resurrection, again, it's Jason Statham. You can't really underestimate Jason Statham, but maybe he'll be in the top 5. I don't know. If he is, he'll be number 5, beating out Kubo or even War Dogs. We'll find out. It's a tough weekend. The end of the summer movie season is kind of a tough weekend to predict. But I think Don't Breathe number 1, Suicide Squad number 2, Sausage Party number 3, War Dogs number 4, and Kubo and the Two Strings number 5. Maybe Kubo and the Mechanic will be battling it out for the top. I can't speak for the top 5 spot, or for the number 5 spot. But I won't be surprised if Kubo does better, because again, it's kind of the last weekend for parents to take their kids out to the theater right before school starts. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I'm sticking with my picks this week. So thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week. Be sure to check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/moviepit. Link will be down below. Also, go check out my WordPress account, where I will be reviewing some of the movies this weekend, hopefully. I reviewed some of the movies that I saw at the Bruce Campbell Horror Film Festival. That's over there as well. I'll put a link down below for that. Don't Breathe review is already up on the WordPress account as well. And also down below, check out some of the trailers that came out this week. We have the Disappointments Room with Kate Beckinsale. Looks kind of creepy. I mean, it's kind of really a glorified teaser. Doesn't really give too much away. There's also the trailer for Halle Berry's new movie called Kidnap, where they steal her kid and she basically becomes Liam Neeson, although she doesn't have a very particular set of skills. She's just a normal mother. That came out. It looks kind of, I don't want to say it looks campy, but it looks a little, I don't know, it just looks a little weird. A great trailer to Casey Affleck's, he doesn't direct a film, but he's in the film, called Manchester by the Sea. Apparently this was one of the best films at Sundance this year, and the trailer looks really, really good, and nothing but good things have been coming out about this movie. So that trailer's down there as well. But also the first trailer for Rings came out. Now Rings is a sequel. It's not a reboot. It's not a remake. It is a sequel to The Ring and The Ring 2. It's a sequel to that. So that trailer came out. It looks, I don't know, it's going to be interesting to see how that movie does. Maybe I'll have to wait till a second trailer comes out. But the first trailer for that came out, and it looks okay. It looks kind of creepy. I don't know, people were clamoring for another The Ring movie, but now it's called Rings, and I don't know. I'll let you guys decide on that. So that's down there as well. Link them all down below in the descriptions/show notes area. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week. I want to thank you guys for putting up with me. Again, I have developing a little bit of a sore throat, and might be coming down with something. So, but I didn't do a podcast last week, so I want to do one today. And yeah. Thank you guys so much for listening. Be sure to go check out Don't Breathe and all the other movies that are coming out this weekend. Be sure to go like the Facebook page. Obviously, there's always something that comes out after the podcast goes up. And yeah. So thank you guys so much for listening. Hopefully you guys have a good, safe weekend. And as always, go watch some movies.